Welcome to EnVision Center News, where we discuss community impact and involvement with today's nonprofit leaders and philanthropists.
Hannah, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Before we get into all things museum and history, which is a very fun topic, tell us a little bit about yourself. How are you a local here? How did you land in this role? Kind of give us your autobiography.
Yeah, I am not a local. I grew up near Cincinnati, Ohio, but one of my aunts has lived here for about 35 years.
Very much a local.
Yes, very much a local. So after college, I came out and stayed with her for a little bit, and I had aspirations to move on to Portland or Seattle. My degree's in costume design for theater. And
We need to talk after this.
yeah, it's very fun. But you kind of have to live in a big city to do that as a job.
Yeah.
And after being here, and after I grew up in a small town, and so then coming here, I was like, I think I am a small town person after all. And so, I've lived in Sandpoint for about 10 years now. I started working at the Ponderay Arts Council.
Okay.
And so just as an admin assistant, but kind of in that arts world that I studied in. And then I worked there for about 4 years. And then I took a tour of the museum as a part of Leadership Sandpoint and fell in love and moved over there. And I've been at the museum for about 5 years now.
Wow. So was there a position when you took the tour? Was there a position open, or did you have to kind of wait till something opened up?
I did, yeah. So it took about 4 months or so, and then a position became available, and I kind of, skipped over to a different nonprofit. But I feel lucky to have been able to work with two great nonprofits in this community and get to see different sides of the arts and culture offerings that we have here in Sandpoint.
Yeah. And I can see the tie between, like history and costume design. I mean, if you're a costumer, you're probably going to be, especially for theater, I feel like you're going to be doing like time period stuff. So you probably, I don't know if you had to take certain history classes as part of your theater degree or.
Yeah. So we did a costume history class.
Okay.
And the research was always my favorite part of that work, being able to study the different time periods. My thesis project in college was Romeo and Juliet that was set in right around 1500. And so being able to really dive into that time period and understand not just what they were wearing, but the context of their world and how that influenced what they wore has always been really fascinating to me. And working at the museum, we have a textile collection of thousands of pieces of clothes that were worn by people who lived here in Bonner County. And so not just clothes either. We have like trade blankets. We have some of the ceremonial garments worn by fraternal organizations. We have so much that of, fabric material items that tell us about the lives of people who've lived here before.
Yeah, so actually tell us about what is the mission or the goal or whatever of the museum specifically. Like, what can people expect if they've never been in there? Like, is it going to be a lot of clothing? Is it going to be a lot of farm equipment? Like, what kind of things are y'all collecting to tell the story of the history here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the Bonner County Historical Society and Museum. And so we do have a specific scope of our collections. And so we have criteria. If someone brings us an item that they'd like to donate to the collection, we have a list of criteria that governs whether we can accept it into the collection or not. And first and foremost, does it have to do with Bonner County's history? So sometimes people bring us amazing things, like a piano that their grandmother played in California, and they brought it up here and they've had it for 20 years, but no one's played it. So we're always looking for, where is the story centered and how does that object help us tell the story of the people who lived specifically here in Bonner County? There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the main thing that we're looking for. And so that can be farm equipment. It can be clothing. It can be archaeological artifacts. It can be taxidermy. It can be, we have an incredible photograph collection and archival collection. So all kinds of paper documentation on different events and people who've lived here going back. You know, most of our history is kind of based in that pioneer era through the present day. But we do have artifacts that represent life, what life was like here for the Kalispel and Kootenai tribes as well. The gem of our collection is a reproduction of a Salish sturgeon-nosed canoe that was used by the tribes to navigate the waterways here for thousands of years.
Wow, that's awesome. Are you part of any kind of network of museums or anything, or do you ever like feed up into an history of Idaho type of museum or anything like that?
Yeah, it depends. So we are, there's an Idaho Association of Museums, and there's also there's a national organization too that provides resources to museums all over. So we're a part of both of those. And depending on what comes up, we do sometimes collaborate with groups that are trying to do maybe a broader history, like through an exhibit or a traveling presentation series and things like that. So we do provide resources to research to other organizations and projects from what we can from our archives.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the research piece? Like, can someone just walk in and say, I inherited this house that has been here for 100 years and I'm trying to decorate it authentically to the time period that it was built in? Help. Like, would that be something that you would help with?
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we do appreciate if people are able to schedule an appointment so that we have time to really understand what they're looking for and to be able to collect materials for them. But we do have walk-ins too. And so you can come in. I would say that's a really common one that we get are people who are living have just moved into a historic home and they want to understand the history of it to help influence how they're going to, if they're going to do updates or so forth.
Wow. See, I never would have thought I just like made that up on the spot. Like I wouldn't have necessarily ever thought like, I can just go to the museum and they will help me.
Yeah.
You know, it seems obvious now, but I'm sure you say it's common that you get that, but I'm sure lots of people don't even realize that that's a resource here.
Exactly. And we can do all kinds of research. So we can help with some genealogy research.
I was going to say with everyone on 23andMe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so a lot of that is now digitized in one form or another through Ancestry or 23andMe. But we do have archives that are not digitized anywhere else. So if you have family members from this area, there is a good chance that we might have photos of them that you've never seen before.
Wow.
Property research is huge. So whether it's the person who's just curious about their home, we also do provide support for people who are doing surveying of their property or trying to establish right-of-ways or easements, that kind of thing. We're not licensed surveyors, we're not the county assessor's office, but we do have some records that can assist in those kind of things. So we have all types of requests and all types of records that we can dig into to help people figure out what they're looking for. It's one of my favorite projects is when somebody comes in and they're looking for photos of their house. And a lot of times with residential homes, we don't have a photo that's going to show like just their house in 1920, but we'll have a photo of one of the old schools. And so maybe in the background, we'll be able to see like 2/3 of the house kind of peeking in there, and we can zoom in on it and we can, see whether it had shutters or that kind of thing. So it is kind of amazing the level of detail we're able to find on a lot of these.
Are there any other kind of resources or services that you offer that people don't necessarily know or don't realize that they can use the museum and the Historical Society for?
Yeah, I would say largely it is the research services and then also some of our educational services. So we provide school tours, but not just to the public schools. We're really flexible in what we can do for education. So if a teacher comes to us and they say, hey, I have 10 kids who really want to learn about we're studying architecture or something. Can I bring them in and do like a then and now photo comparison project? We're able to do that. We have a lot of options for homeschool groups as well. So, yeah, we have a program called Traveling Trunks, where we have hands-on activities that are in a bag that you can kind of check out. And so it's similar to the library of things at the library, but teachers can check those out, take them to their classroom or take them home for their homeschool kids, do the activity, and then bring it back to us. So yeah, we have a lot of flexibility with our education offerings, and I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, basically it sounds like you just kind of gotta ask.
Yeah,
there's probably
absolutely.
a way to get whatever it is that you're looking for education wise for kiddos.
Definitely.
Or adults,
Yeah. We have so many. We have about 60 volunteers who are in and out, periodically helping out with the collection, with our education programs. And they're all such creative, curious people that there's almost always someone on hand who can kind of guide you through what we have and help you find what you're looking for.
So this is a question that it's probably going to sound very silly from your perspective, but
no. We love silly questions.
For museums, and some museums I get, like huge museums, like the Seattle Art Museum is in a huge building, right? Yeah. And so I imagine they have a basement and things. But for places that are smaller, your history never stops. And so your collection never will end. Where do you store all the stuff, or how do you decide when you're rotating it through maybe? How does that work, especially on a smaller scale when we're not some huge New York City museum or whatever?
Right. That's a great question. So, for example, we only have about 15% of our collection on exhibit at any given time. So about half of our building is storage. And so it's really just, dark, cool, kind of, we try to maintain those ideal environmental conditions for the objects that we have. So about 15% of it's out on exhibit. We do have permanent exhibits on display, and so we update those. We try to do that every about 7 years on a rotating basis. And then we do have a temporary exhibit always as well. And so that's really our chance to go back and dig through everything we have and say, oh, this piece is really special. No one's seen it in a long time. Let's pull that out. It fits in with this theme that we're exploring in the temporary exhibit. But it is tricky. I mean, our building right now is about, it's over 5,000 square feet, and it is absolutely packed to the gills. So there are two ways we can address that, both of which one of which is we add onto our building or get a bigger building. And that's something that we're actively in the process of examining right now is what are the next, over the next 5 to 10 years, what can we do to expand the space that we have available, whether that is an addition to our existing building or offsite storage or things like that. The other thing is a process called deaccessioning, and this is a very formal process by which we can actually remove items from our collection. And so there's all kinds of criteria that we have to meet for that and protocol we have to follow. But I think for our collection back in the 1970s, when they were just starting to collect history and we had a big empty building and there was nothing in it, there were a lot of people donating things at that time that no longer fit within the scope of our collection. So say someone was in Arizona and they bought a souvenir down there and they brought it home and then somehow it wound up at the museum. That doesn't fit in our scope of collections. So through this deaccessioning process, we can figure out what is the best way to remove that from our collection. Does it go to a museum in Arizona? Can it go back to the donor? And then we're able to make a little bit of space that way.
Okay. And do you do calls for certain things like you're looking for? Like, we're about to do a fishing exhibit. Who's got old poles? Or I don't know.
Definitely.
Do you do those kinds of things? Okay.
Yeah. So we always have a list on our website. It's kind of our wish list. So right now we have, so for example, it has the specific years of the Monticula yearbooks that we're missing, and other types of, it's easier with records like that where there's a publication every year. So we might say, oh, we're missing the 2005 winter issue of the Sandpoint magazine. Does anyone happen to have it? Or this yearbook from the 1960s. And then people can kind of help us fill in the gaps that way. If we are doing an exhibit, we have in the past done a call out for specific items. So if we know we're going to do a fishing exhibit and we know someone who has this incredible like home handmade fishing lure that they caught this fantastic giant fish on, and we have a photo of the fish in our collection, maybe we reach out to them, and even if it's a precious family heirloom and they don't want to donate it to the museum, sometimes people will let us have things on loan for that period of the exhibit, and then we can return it to the family.
Yeah, that's really cool. I bet most people are very honored if you asked.
It is kind
to
of
be
exciting.
like, oh, my stuff's going to be at the museum. Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially if you know it's going to be on exhibit. That is a hard thing to tell people when they donate items, is most likely your item will go into storage for some period of time, and we'll take really good care of it, and it will get its chance to shine eventually, but we can't promise that everything will be on exhibit all the time.
Right. Most of it won't be. Only 15%.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then what are your biggest needs as far as volunteers? You talked about you have it seems like you have a pretty healthy group, healthy number there, but what are your needs, and how can people get involved?
Yeah, definitely. We have a fantastic volunteer coordinator. Her name is Val, and we can put you in touch with her, and she's really good at matching people up to the right project. So I'd say broadly we have kind of 3 different groups of people, of volunteers. We have people who help with our education programs, we have people who help at events, and then we have people who help with the collection. And we always need people to help with the collection. It is, if you like detailed work, you'll probably really enjoy working with the collection. We also are working on a scholar program. So this is where you would be able to, we would get a group together and train them on how to do research at a deeper level. So we have probably about a dozen different resources that anyone can look through really easily. So you can look up obituaries, you can look in the newspaper archives. There are a bunch of things that are pretty easy to teach anyone to do, and we're happy to help anyone who comes in to do that. But to be able to dig really deep and to understand what these, really old property records written in cursive mean, or to be able to figure out the right keywords to find a specific photograph. Those are things that we would love to be able to teach some people to do that really deep dive research, and then they would be able to help us with other research requests, or to write stories that we could publish in the newspapers or our newsletters and that kind of thing.
I've heard, actually, someone pointed out to me recently that after I went through school, but not too long after, the schools, public schools at least, stopped teaching cursive. And so that those kids are now adults, and they can't be they're bad historians because they can't read.
And it's cursive. I mean, it's tough, but it's a reality we're having to adapt to. We had an intern probably 3 years ago who was graduating high school, and we sat him down in front of a bunch of papers and said, hey, can you help us sort these? And he said, I can't read cursive. Yeah. I don't know how to do this. And so that really is helping us be more mindful. If we have documents that are really special and we want to be those handwritten documents into text that people will be able to read in the future. But it's something that we're always grappling with, is this idea that technology isn't slowing down. It's constantly changing. And so whether it's cursive handwriting to printed handwriting to typed handwriting, or whether it's, we're trying to save documents on a floppy disk and then a CD and then a USB drive, we have to constantly be mindful of how that is changing how we can archive information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's crazy to think that maybe in a couple decades there'll be like an original tablet or something that someone used like on a farm to like
Yeah.
when the farm started getting high tech or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to me to think about. I have an original Kindle, like before it was a touchscreen, and I was gonna just throw it away, and someone was like, "That's gonna be like in a museum one day. You should keep that." And I was like, all right. Like, I still have it and nobody uses it and it just sits there, but it's the original Kindle. I don't know what'll happen with it, but it's just crazy to think how fast technology is moving and how even in everybody's own lifetime, the stuff that you maybe interacted with as a kid will end up in a museum when you're older.
Yeah, that's hitting me these days.
You're like, that's antique. Oh, that's or retro, like the clothes that we used to wear in like high school is like retro now. Like, really? That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. When we have school groups come in, we always love to ask them, just to get their mind in kind of the framework that we work in. What is one thing from your life that you would donate to a museum in the future? And cell phones are a big one when we answer that.
Oh man, didn't even have a cell phone when I was a kid.
Exactly.
8-year-olds and 5-year-olds have them. Okay, so you have a pretty cool event coming up. Can you talk about that?
We do, yes. So I think this is so special because it actually is a tradition that goes back to the 1920s. So back in 1922, a group got together and their goal was to find the remnants of the Cullyspell House. And the Cullyspell House was the trading post that David Thompson first set up when he arrived here in 1809. And that's a whole big story that we could go into another time. But it was the first permanent building built in the state of Idaho. And so this group in the 1920s was trying to find it. It had been lost. And so it had fallen down and they were trying to find out where it was. And so in 1923, they actually got a whole group of old timers together and they were able to find the chimney stones from this trading post. And to celebrate, they threw what they called a pioneer picnic. And so this was a way that all of the communities around the county went out to Hope, where the Cullyspell House was, and they had a big community picnic, and they just celebrated that they had found like the roots of their pioneer history. So this is something that has come and gone over the years. The museum we've held probably a dozen of them in the last 50 years around this idea of a community picnic. And so we are hosting a pioneer picnic in Lakeview Park on Sunday, July 20th. So it's going to be an afternoon of fun from 1 to 4. And we will have carnival games. We'll be churning ice cream by hand. We're encouraging people to bring their picnic blankets, spread them out in the park.
Will you be dressed like pioneer women and men?
I do have a costume, so if it's not unbearably hot, I will be wearing it.
Nice.
And so, we will have the museum open. We'll have our cabin open. We're going to set up kind of a little pioneer station for the kids where they can learn how to use a washboard and they can grind grain and they can churn butter and just kind of understand what it was like to live 100 years ago or more.
That's so cool.
And so we'll have some food vendors, but people are welcome to bring their own picnic and just kind of hang out, spend time with their neighbors. One thing that's really special is we have been reaching out to communities all across the county. So something that's happened over the last 50 years is when the Historical Society was set up, it was very Bonner County. We still are, but we had board members from all corners of the county. We had members from all over the county. And I think over the years, it has sort of shrunk a little bit, and there's a perception that it's like the Sandpoint Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So this is really an effort to reach out to all of the outlying communities and bring everyone together and show like this is our Bonner County community.
Love that.
Yeah. So we're inviting different community groups, Grange halls, different like civic clubs from around the county to host the different games that we're going to have. And each station will talk a little bit about the history of that town or that, Grange hall, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds so fun. And everything's free?
So it's not free.
Okay.
This is our big membership drive for the year. And so we are going to be trying to get new members to join the Historical Society.
To join the Historical Society, you're just a support. You don't have to be a historian. You don't have to be.
Correct.
You're just somebody who's like, hey, I support what you're doing. And
Absolutely.
I'm paying however much a month or a year.
Yeah. And so if you become a member of the Historical Society, you get free admission to the museum all year long. You get discounts on our events and on research services and photo orders. And you get our newsletter every month. So there are benefits to becoming a member throughout the year. But also, if you sign up for a membership, you get a bunch of free tickets to use at the carnival games.
Okay.
So tickets will be $2 each if you're not a member and $1 each if you are. And if you are a member or you become a member, you also get free tickets. So
okay, cool.
So it will be kind of like an old time carnival. We'll have things like, ring toss. We'll have a water balloon throwing competition, watermelon spit. We're going to try to do a tug of war.
Okay.
We're hoping we can kind of have like, different towns competing in the tug of war.
Like North County versus South County.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll have, the ice cream churning. We'll have all kinds of games and fun activities for people to do there. So it should be a lot of fun.
Sounds great. Sounds like a blast. Is there anything about the museum that we haven't touched on? Things you want people to know? Maybe a need that you have? We talked about volunteers, but maybe there's some other need that you might have. Anything you want people to know or be aware of around the museum?
Yeah, I would just say if you haven't been in the museum, our museum is really special. Our exhibits are really world class, honestly. We've had visitors come from New York City who've said this is the best small museum I've ever been inside. The way that we exhibit artifacts is really artistic, and you get to see a lot in a very small space. So I would say come visit. Yeah. Really, that's the big thing. If you have family visiting in town, bring them in. Everyone walks away having a good experience after visiting the museum. And what I love most about it, especially as someone who did not grow up here, is the more I learn about the history of this place, the more I feel like I belong here. And I think that's something that everyone can take away when they visit.
Absolutely. Such a great line to end on. Thank you, Hannah, for what you do. And folks, be sure to check out the museum or let the Pioneer Picnic be kind of their gateway drug into the museum if they haven't been there already. A fun thing for the family. So thanks, Hannah.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. For more information, you can go to crecIdaho.com. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.